got a great panel out front tonight. Hillary Clinton supporter Bernard Whitman, Bernie Sanders supporter Sally Cohn, the co-chair of Donald Trump's campaign here in New York, Joseph Borelli, former RNC communications director Doug Heye, and Donald Trump supporter Aaron Elmore, as well as the Blaze's Buck Sexton. Doug, if I could begin with you first. You look at this 50-state strategy as explained there so well by Tom Foreman. Can he really change the map?
Maybe in some places he can change the map, but California is not where it starts. I worked at the California congressional delegations for 6.5 years, ran a congressional race out there, worked on others. He's got some challenges there, and some challenges that aren't just Trump's challenges. It's where do you win? What counties are you driving up the vote? Is that in the Central Valley? Are you trying to do so in San Diego? And then how? What strategy are you using? And some of this is what Sarah talked about. And then with who? It's a weak state party. The conservative activists have fallen in recent years. There's not a lot there to build for Trump to really get there.
Joe, you heard Sarah Murray talking about the organization that he lacks in these states. How can he pull off this strategy if he doesn't have the staff on the ground?
Well, I think the big picture is that he's trying to flip the script. He's someone that has done more with less, both less money spent, both with less staff, and we see him winning, in a lot of states in the primary. Essentially, this puts Hillary Clinton on the defensive. She's someone that never expected to have to even consider defending California, a big state, a lot of electoral votes. Now, with just some rallies, with just some earned social media, with some earned regular media, he could potentially just challenge her there enough where it makes a dent in her budget.
Buck, do you buy that?
Look, I think that Trump has been able to do a lot of things that everybody thought that he couldn't. I think that going after New York and going after California are more a rhetorical play than a play to actually win those states, because it's just a way of him saying, look, we're going after everything. We're changing the entire narrative here. And I don't think he's going to win either of those states, but I do think that in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, places where he will be competitive, or at least it looks like he'll be competitive, saying that he's going after the Democrats everywhere on their home turf plays into the Trump narrative, which is I'm just a lean, mean, winning machine. And that's essentially what he's trying to get across.
Bernard, does the Clinton campaign look at this and get worried?
No, I don't think so at all. This is a classic fake. I mean, I think that Donald Trump would stretch himself so thin that he'd actually crack. The idea that he could put California and New York in play is absurd. In fact, I think there's a lot more concern about his winning Arizona and Georgia. And if I were advising him, I'd say spend your time in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. He's got to win every single state that Mitt Romney won or John McCain won, plus some. Don't forget, these guys both lost. Currently, he's underperforming both of those guys among whites, among Hispanics, among women. He has got a tall order cut out for him. So I think this is braggadocio at its best, which is the fine point of Donald Trump.
I see you nodding your head, Sally, and smiling a little bit.
I mean, yeah, look, I am constantly pointing out to certainly my side, sort of Democratic left and America, that Donald Trump can win. It is possible. We shouldn't sort of rest on our laurels. But yeah, this is sort of classic Trump, and we all know whomever the nominee is on the Democratic side versus Trump, this is going to play out in the Rust Belt. In 4 states, that's what it's going to all come down to. Which, by the way, is a travesty that American politics and elections always come down to just a few states mattering more than the rest. But there you have it. The rest is just talk.
So, Aaron, I want to ask you, and as we've been talking here, we're still seeing those pictures of this enormous protester presence outside the Donald Trump rally. I just want to play some sound of both Trump and Sanders, what they've said at events when violence has happened. Let's have a listen.
Welcome to the political revolution.
The guards are very gentle with him. He's walking out like big high fives, smiling, laughing, like to punch him in the face.
We need a political revolution where millions of people stand up, fight back, and create a government that works for all of us.
So I was rough with him, and I started screaming. I said, get the hell out of here.
Aaron, is Donald Trump partly to blame for the kind of violence we've seen outside his rallies?
Certainly not. He's not inciting violence, and these are certain, little tidbits of information taken out of context as well. I think Bernie's just as responsible, saying we need to spark a revolution. So I think these are Bernie's people. They're getting out there, sort of the Occupy Wall Street movement, getting aggressive.
If Bernie Sanders
Doug, I do want to get to you, Sally.
If Bernie Sanders is just as responsible, you're admitting that Donald Trump is also partially responsible. Look, anybody who's setting fires or throwing rocks at police should be thrown in jail.
Absolutely.
But when we have candidates who are saying, punch somebody, I'll pay your legal bills, or welcome to the revolution, you are contributing to this atmosphere of ugliness.
Right, Sally?
I'm sorry, but but that's just absurd. Look, Bernie Sanders' campaign is based on an opposition to the sort of hawkish pro-war sort of. It is a pacifist-driven movement. He has very clearly denounced violence anytime it has come anywhere near his campaign. And to say revolution, come on, then everyone in the Tea Party is inciting violence too. But let's be clear: Donald Trump has encouraged and incited people to actually be violent by saying, "I want to punch him in the face myself, and I'll pay your legal fees." And his rhetoric throughout this campaign has been based on violence against Mexicans and Muslims, and it's just like
Sanders is not responsible for the violence of the people that are protesting in his name. It is interesting, though, that these elements of the left like to show up in places and break stuff and wave Mexican flags. When you look and see what the American left has devolved into, they have a lot of people that act in this hysterical fashion. So I don't blame Bernie. I just blame the people that think that Bernie's actually going to create a political revolution. Which is ridiculous.
There are 1,000
the most hypocritical thing right now is to hear Democrats saying that these are just a few rotten tomatoes in the crowd. When one nut job at a Trump rally punches someone, media heads exploded.
That was Donald Trump from the stage arguing that we should punch protesters in the face. But I got to say, Bernie's condemnations in Vegas,
and 10,000
Bernie's condemnations in Vegas rag.
We'll have to leave it there. Thankfully, there will be no punches here, at least tonight. No punches tonight. Thanks very much, my panel. We're going to have him back out front next. He once called Donald Trump a dangerous con man. So why is Marco Rubio now saying his former rival should be president? Plus, is Donald Trump closer to debating Bernie Sanders? Trump gives his final answer tonight. And we will continue to follow the protests as well outside that Trump rally. We'll take you there live. Breaking news, you're looking at live pictures of protesters gathering outside of Donald Trump's rally in San Diego. This is happening as we speak there. Police say protesters tried to breach a secured area, and at least one arrest has been made so far. Our Paul Verkaman is there now. Paul, is the situation deteriorating?
Well, just seconds ago, the San Diego Police Department in riot gear made a major move. And what they did is they separated the people who are with me in the area that I'm standing in. These are anti-Trump demonstrators, and they separated from them. If you can look just across the street, those are all Trump supporters. They were yelling USA, USA. They were shouting. They were getting in it with each other. They're yelling all sorts of different things. And as we said, there have been some arrests. I don't know if they're detaining this person because this is a clear arrest, if they're just getting from the other side, then let them go. They're trying to separate the Trump supporters from the anti-Trump demonstrators, and they had made some major moves with barricades and with police in riot gear, and at some point they were separated by hundreds of yards. But as they came out of the center on the streets of San Diego, we're right outside the historic Gaslamp District, that's where we had this standoff, the shouting match, these skirmishes between both sides. And they've been yelling at each other. We saw some punches thrown, 2 or 3, but basically we have not seen a large amount of arrests, just all the shouting that's going on right now.
Thanks very much, our Paul Verkaman, who is there live in San Diego. You're seeing him there in the midst of what are becoming violent protests there, potentially violent protests. As you're watching this, Doug, formerly with the RNC, we're basically seeing this at every event now.
We're seeing this at every event. We're hearing the words, as Paul just said, punches thrown. Doesn't matter how many punches are thrown. Punches are thrown. We're seeing this time after time, and it's why the committee is so concerned about what we're going to see in Cleveland and obviously in Philadelphia as well. This is happening on both sides. There's a lot of anger on both sides. There deserves to be a lot of anger at Washington from both sides, but it's why both committees are scared about some of the security procedures that we'll see at the convention.
Erin, I have to ask you, does this damage Trump as a candidate if people see consistently that he engenders this kind of response from people?
We already know that nothing Donald Trump does or anything around him causes any sort of change. I've always called him the Teflon Don, and that's absolutely true. No matter what he says or what he does, his voters are still coming out, and right now he and Hillary, every poll is basically showing they're neck and neck, so nothing really matters.
Yeah, well, that's, let's be frank, in the primary process, we're a different set of voters. As we get into the general, Sally, Bernard, do you think that holds?
But it does matter. This is absolutely outrageous, and Donald Trump needs to get out there and say, you know what, Peaceful protest is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I totally respect people's right to protest, to gather, to voice their opinions. But my supporters should calm down, be civil, respect one another. But you know what? We're never going to hear that from him because that is not in his interest. His interest is to gin people up and engender violence.
Oh my gosh, it turns out, yes, some of them are. Oh, but that's so interesting. You're saying the punches were thrown, but you're going to assume which side they're from. Listen, again, first of all, I misrepresent, I really resent the mischaracterization of this. Again, we have so far heard thousands of people, 1,000 people there protesting peacefully all day. One arrest made, but violence might be happening in a moment. And let's be clear, this is a history we have.
The police have to separate them. The police do have to separate them.
And but them, both sides. And by the way, we in the media really love when this stuff gets ugly because we want to cover it more. The fact that people are out there exercising their civil and constitutional right to object is important and significant. God bless them all. I hope that the protesters on both sides stay peaceful. But yes, this is important. People need to see this. If Trump is sucking up all the media oxygen, this is the only way for these people to be heard.
Joe, I have to ask you, I saw Donald Trump at a rally 2 days ago when someone was removed, a protester was removed, and he said, "Don't hurt him." And then he made a comment saying, "Well, I just say that for the television cameras." Kind of.
Well, I think the media always overplays whatever he says, but
I didn't over.
Let's imagine let's remember what went on outside that rally, where you had shamefully so many protesters from the left assaulting police officers, throwing bottles, throwing rocks. Honestly, if they were my supporters, I would be ashamed of myself, and I think they have to own it.
Are they wearing Bernie Sanders T-shirts and they're not running?
This is a distinction that I think should be made. Yeah, I would like it too, honestly, if Trump would come out and say, look, everybody behave. If you're on my side, behave. And I think he started to do that. He should do more of that. But on the left, you see people that actually think that they have a heckler's veto, that they should be able to shut down Trump rallies They absolutely think that it's their right to say that Trump is beyond the pale. Look, he is the nominee for the GOP. We all know this now.
Question, why is it too much to ask, Doug, for the presumptive GOP nominee to make a statement saying, I don't want to see violence at these events?
Absolutely. Yeah. It should be common sense for him to do it. It should be common sense for Bernie Sanders to be more declarative than he was after the obviously disgrace that we saw in Nevada. No hands are really clean here. It's a disgrace, and we should do what we can do.
Why is he responsible at all for people protesting Donald Trump? Why is Donald Trump responsible at all for people protesting his rallies? He's not. Not one bit. He did not cause it. He's a candidate for office expressing his views, and you may not like it.
That's discrimination against whole groups of people.
I'm sorry, but the list of things I have to talk to my 7-year-old about to not emulate in the potential possible future president of this country is getting a little too long. You want to draw analogies between the protesters and Trump? Fine, you're free to do that. But they're not running to be president. He is, and he has a responsibility to stop stoking this kind of violence and hatred in this country.
You can't control a 7-year-old. I can't control my 3-year-old. How do we expect Donald Trump to control adults by the millions?
I want him to control himself and be a better role model if he wants to run this country.
How is he going to be a role model for people that hate him and aren't going to vote for him anyway? It's just not going to happen. He isn't capable of telling people how to act and making them act.
But when you start to become violent, that's when the leaders of the two parties have to come out and say, you know what, this is unacceptable. We need to have civil discourse. You need to be able to express yourself freely. But when it comes to shouting people down or even worse, throwing punches, that is absolutely unacceptable and out of bounds.
Both parties have a responsibility here.
Both parties absolutely do. And I was actually, frankly, incredibly frustrated with Bernie Sanders. I think he really lost a lot of respect and a lot of support from people that have said, you know what, he's basically a good guy. He actually waffled on coming down hard on the Vegas.
And I said as much too, by the way.
Democrats are the ones that have actually had protest movements, or people that support the Democratic Party are the ones that are engaged in protest movements, where the media constantly has to say, well, it's mostly peaceful, except for the people burning down, buildings, or people who are throwing rocks at police, or people who are doing other things that are violent and illegal. Those are always people that support Democratic
causes. I wonder, is that anger that we see out in the streets, and these are again live pictures here, does that reflect just the broader state of mind right now of voters on both sides?
When Donald Trump began his campaign by suggesting that Mexicans are all rapists and murderers, what do you expect his supporters to do? Go out and take matters into their own hands. That's what my concern is. And when you couple that with his support for allowing people to carry guns in churches, in colleges, in office buildings, in restaurants, I mean, my God, that is a crazy society.
That's absurd.
This is not a civil candidate. His discourse, his message, what he wants to do to massive parts of this country is not civil. I would like to see the protesters, to be honest, be infinitely more peaceful, because I think their greatest power is in contrast to his hateful rhetoric and the violence that we've seen some of his supporters engage in.
Folks, great discussion on that. Again, we're going to keep you around. Thanks very much. And just to Tonight, Donald Trump changes his mind again. Moments ago, Donald Trump declaring that he will not debate Bernie Sanders just hours after he had insisted that he would love to do so. In a statement, Trump said it would be, quote, inappropriate since Sanders is running second behind Hillary Clinton. Sanders had this message for Trump.
You know, I hope that he changes his mind again. I mean, Mr. Trump is known to change his mind many times in a day. And I would, Trump goes around, he's a bully. He's a big, tough guy. Well, Mr. Trump, what are you afraid of? Why do you not want to see a debate here in California and obviously all across this country?
Is the back and forth between Trump and Sanders leaving Hillary Clinton high and dry? Scott McLean is out front.
Hillary Clinton says the Democratic primary is all but over. But don't tell Bernie Sanders that.
We can win here in California, and we can come out with the Democratic nomination.
As new poll numbers show Clinton and Sanders now in a dead heat in California, Sanders continues to make the case that he has a better shot of winning in November.
If we win the Democratic nomination, we're going to defeat Donald Trump. Not only are we going to defeat him, we're going to defeat him very badly.
Clinton continues fighting for votes in California, today speaking to community leaders in Oakland and hitting the airwaves with ads in English and Spanish.
Una vida de lucha. Hillary Clinton.
While hitting Trump at rallies.
Send a message to a demagogic, rhetorically divisive, and dangerous candidate that when you think about the future, you don't see Donald Trump's face up there.
On the verge of clinching the party nomination, Clinton is trying to shift her focus to the general election.
Donald Trump is an unqualified loose cannon who cannot get near the most powerful job in the world.
But Sanders is not making that easy. On Jimmy Kimmel last night, Sanders called out Clinton's comments to CNN earlier this month that she had the nomination wrapped up.
Just a tinge arrogance. I kind of think that on June 7th, people of California will have a message for Secretary Clinton.
Clinton has declined to debate Sanders in California, so instead, he's challenged Trump. Sanders said 2 networks offered to host the debate, but today, Trump backed out, saying in a statement, as much as I want to debate Bernie Sanders, and it would be an easy payday, I will wait to debate the first-place finisher in the Democratic Party, probably crooked Hillary Clinton or whoever it may be.
I hope that he changes his mind again. I mean, Mr. Trump is known to change his mind many times in a day. And I would, Trump goes around, he's a bully. He's a big, tough guy. Well, Mr. Trump, what are you afraid of?
And this afternoon, Sanders sent out another statement about this debate proposal, saying he hopes Trump will change his mind. Now, while Bernie Sanders doesn't want to let this idea go, a lot of Democrats wish that he would. In fact, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin called it BS that Sanders continues to push this debate. Jim.
Scott McLean in Washington. My panel is back with me now. Bernard, you heard Sanders calling Hillary Clinton arrogant there. Fair criticism?
No. To quote Al Gore, facts are stubborn things. This nomination process is finished. She's 3 million votes ahead. She's 800 delegates ahead. Without even super she's almost 300 delegates ahead. She has 55% of the vote. She's won 27 contests. Compared to 8 years ago against Barack Obama, that race was razor thin. I mean, yes, California, New Mexico, New Jersey should absolutely vote. The contest is over, and he should exit the stage gracefully like Ted Cruz.
Sally, I wonder if you have a slightly different opinion on that.
Well, they should vote and have 2 candidates to choose between. I mean, it's just not over yet. And yes, I will admit that the math looks hard for Bernie Sanders, but it is also it is still telling for Hillary Clinton that at this point she can't put it away against him. And by the way, it is still useful for the Democratic process that, again, it is nice that the Democrats are talking about substance, still talking about the economy and foreign policy and trade policy and having that discussion. And it is good, a clarifying process for America and for the future of the Democratic Party.
Joe, I have to ask you on this debate idea, which Donald Trump has put to rest today, but he had said it was a dream. It would have been a dream to debate him. Why the turnaround?
I'll start here. This is something that was started on a comedy show. It was Jimmy Kimmel. It was a loose comment, just like Hillary Clinton saying the other night that Beyonce was going to be her vice presidential pick. But it did get a lot of media buzz. I don't think it would have done anything to benefit Donald Trump. And as far as Bernie Sanders goes, he should be more concerned that Hillary Clinton, who he's in a dead heat with in California, is refusing to debate him despite promising to do so when they say set out the agenda for the debates. I just want to go back to their point. Hillary Clinton seems a little bit delusional now if she thinks that this race is over, and she's acting as though she's won the nomination already. So I actually will agree with Sally on this. Don't get too excited. But she just has this. He said it, a tinge of arrogance, and he's right.
Buck, I want to talk to you because they are obviously from different parties, Sanders and Trump, but a lot of their positions we were talking about earlier are very similar. Just for our viewers, we're going to play a few of their comments back and forth.
We're not going to cut Social Security.
I will do everything within my power not to touch Social Security.
Bush's decision to get us into a war in Iraq unilaterally was one of the worst foreign policy blunders in the history of the United States.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake.
We need a serious discussion about the role of superdelegates. Clearly, the current situation is undemocratic.
I'm hundreds of delegates ahead, but the system, folks, is rigged.
Is Trump missing an opportunity here to win over some independents?
Well, I think that he wants to make sure everyone knows that he's the front runner for the GOP. I mean, or he is the GOP nominee, rather, and he's only going to debate whoever he has to on the Democrat side. So that's obvious. But I do think that he will try, as part of his strategy, to win over Bernie supporters. I don't think it's absolutely baked into the cake that everybody who supports Bernie Sanders is just going to march in lockstep behind Hillary Clinton. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. There is some crossover between some of the Trump positions on trade and on workers and on manufacturing base with Bernie Sanders. And so he's not going to do it. He obviously was. I don't think he was ever going to do it, but we will see this return to, can Trump pull over Democrat voters? And if he's going to do that, it's going to be people from the Bernie side, not from, obviously, the Hillary diehard supporters.
Erin, what's his message going to be to those kinds of voters to try to draw them into his camp?
I'm anti-establishment.
Right.
I'm not the norm.
I'm an outsider.
I have completely swung the pendulum the other way. Come to my side, you're going to see change. Even now, Republicans that were all the way on the right they've made their bed with Donald Trump. They were super religious, anti-homosexual, instead of focusing on what the core Republicans really care about. And that's what Donald Trump is focusing on, and that's why he's winning. So those are the people that maybe Bernie could get too.
Doug, are you seeing the party step into line behind Trump now?
You're starting to see more people fall into line. It seems somewhat natural, but there are two types of resistance. You see the attacks that we saw in Susana Martinez. That tells people, maybe I don't want to get on board with this right now. And then you also see people who are starting to say, I'll support the nominee, and that's about it. They're not never Trump, they're hesitant Trump, which means they're not going to work hard for his election.
It doesn't really work as a hashtag, though, hesitant Trump as well.
Never Hillary is a much better one to adopt.
All right, folks, you've been great. Thanks very much. Out front next, we're following breaking.